Welcome to the Artist Exchange, where two artists come together on one podcast to talk anything and everything about music. And they both perform. Make sure you hit the follow or subscribe button wherever you are listening or watching. And now, here's your host, Bennett Shear.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Artist Exchange. I'm your host, Bennett Shear. Really excited to welcome today's artists from Marina City, singer Ryan Argast and drummer Eric Somers-Urrea.
What's going on, my dude?
Hello.
It's good to see you again, brother.
Yeah, Ryan, we saw each other before. I had you on American Idol on air. I'm going to stop doing the talking right now. I want you guys to explain who you are and how you guys came together. I'm sure it's a long story of how you formed and how long you've been together, but take it away.
Oh man, well we're sick of each other at this point.
We actually haven't seen each other, and we haven't been in the same room with each other for quite a bit right now.
I know. Which is your facial hair?
I was wondering, what's going to happen here? Am I getting them in the same room, separate rooms?
Yeah, we're in separate rooms right now. To talk about my facial hair, I'm doing a solo music video right now that hopefully will be released in a couple weeks after this is done. But I age in the video, so I had like a really big beard, and then so this is the last thing that I did. I had to shave all the way down to be like a kid again, but it's weird. I actually literally every time I look in the mirror, I'm like, whoa, that's not me, or that is me. I don't know. I don't really know what I'm gonna do. I probably gonna grow it back out, but I got options now. So, anyways. True. Eric, why don't you tell them who you are, though?
So
my beard.
Yeah, I know. I wish I could grow a beard. I just, I'm capable of just a little bit of stubble. But anyways, So
I'm right there with you, brother.
We've, yeah. But yeah, so Ryan and I have been playing together for pretty much a little over 10 years now. Is that right? Something crazy like that.
We are like 13th year.
Yeah, geez, that's wild. So yeah, pretty much. Like most of my musical career, I've been playing drums with Ryan. So yeah, we started out playing together. I just got out of college and I was looking for gigs, and I was scouring Craigslist actually, and came across someone in Ryan's solo project at the time, looking for bandmates. So I went and auditioned for that. They, I guess, realized I wasn't an axe murderer from Craigslist or something. So, so they ended up taking me on, and through that we kind of decided that the solo project should be more of a band thing. So that's what became Marina City, and that was 2011, and we've been playing together ever since. Yeah.
I mean, we didn't officially like tell everybody that we were a band until like 2012, but like you said, we were together in 2010-ish doing some solo stuff. I was going by the name Ryan Allen, which is my middle name. And then, I mean, that's kind of it. We've been up and down all over the country, different ends of the earth on playing music and doing different things together. And now as I do some solo project stuff, I just go by my actual name, Ryan Argast, because I tend to think that the music that I'm releasing as a solo act, the reason why I'm releasing as a solo act and not Marina City is because it's like really, really painfully personal, that it feels weird to hide behind a different name than my own. But I will say we are writing some new music with Marina City, and I just feel like there's so much I want to talk about. And I feel like the last record, The Simulation, which I'm sure we'll talk about in here, was like talking about like the war outside my bedroom window, the thing that we're constantly watching and living in. And I think the next music that I want to write is like the war within, the stuff that I'm dealing with all the time, turning 30 and the ups and downs of what that is and the changes of life that happens. So I'm really interested to see where that goes, whether that's Marina City or solo. I feel like I got a lot to say right now, probably more than I feel like I've had to say in a couple of years. So I'm excited to see where that goes. Just before Eric says, like, even in my solo stuff, Eric has collaborated with me on stuff. He plays drums on some of the songs that need like full drums. And then like even prior to Marina City, when I was the other solo project, he was doing that stuff. So we're pretty much in every little direction here. And we even work for the same company when it comes to like other like cover stuff. So we're everywhere. But anyways, go Eric, what are you gonna say?
Well, I mean, I was gonna say that Ryan's been like, I always tell people that in terms of collaboration, Ryan is sort of like the other half of what I like to do. So, I grew up as like primarily a drummer. I've been a massive music nerd my entire life. So I did school band in high school and drumline and marching band, and then I ended up going to college and studying classical music and got my degree doing that stuff. But drum set's been like my main thing forever. But through doing all this other stuff, I learned my music theory. I know I know my way around a piano at least. I wouldn't call myself a piano player because my teacher said my technique was always terrible. But I can fake it on piano and on guitar on like a really good day. Um, but no, so when it comes to like what Ryan and I do, like especially for Marina City, like my brain is very uh rhythmically oriented. Like I everything that I focus on is based around sort of my roles as a drummer, which would be like the foundation and the structure and how a song progresses, dynamically and structurally. So a lot of times when we're writing new music, it'll be me kind of messing around with some synth sounds and building basically the foundation and the core of like the chord structure and how the vibe goes and all of that stuff. And then I sort of pass it off to Ryan, and Ryan is lyric and melody master, which is not how my brain works. So from there, he kind of puts his stuff on top, and then we'll kind of go back and forth and flesh things out and kind of push each other to see how strong the song can be in the end.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that like typically, I mean, maybe now more so than any other time in the history of Eric and Ryan, that we really don't listen to a lot of similar music or never really didn't. And so it was interesting because now it's like, I'm coming from this different kind of background. He's coming from this different background. Let's see what we can make in the middle. Now, like I said, I would say that probably our playlists are closer than they've ever been now that metal nerd that he used to be is actually like pop music, and that
He
little
extinguished it. I don't know what happened.
and that little pop dancing kid actually likes to do some hardcore stuff at times. So it's like now it comes together. But I don't think we would have been friends in high school. It's a good thing that we met after or right at my tail end of high school for sure.
Yeah, elitist music nerd me would not have appreciated Ryan.
Eric, tell me about some of those posters that you have behind you, because I'm just curious. I mean, any stick out to you as far as those albums or those? What do you got behind you?
Oh yeah, so this is my vice, I guess, as I collect concert posters. So
Oh,
if I
concert
ever go to a
posters.
show, I buy the tour poster, especially like if they have really cool art prints. So yeah, I got like a bunch of Nine Inch Nails stuff. It's my favorite band. I've seen them a billion times. I got Gorillas. I got several Lollapalooza posters back there. Glass Animals. Um, I always sort of gravitated towards music that's really weird and sometimes ugly, very unpolished, but like in an intentional way, right? Like I always felt like Nine Inch Nails, for example. I always used to describe them when I was in high school. It's like if you took like a Beyonce production and then buried it under the ground for like a few years and then unearthed it, and then that's kind of what it would sound like. It's all like corroded and rotten, even though it comes from very electronic core. So when Ryan and I are bouncing around ideas, that's usually where my brain starts, is that sort of, I hesitate to say industrial because it's not, I don't generally do industrial stuff, but sort of like heavier, really distorted bass synths and really weird sounds. And then I'll send that to Ryan and be like, all right, let's see what kind of crazy pop melodies he can put on the top of this chaos. And then he always comes back and he's always like, yeah, the really weird one was my favorite one, and I got this crazy melody for it. So it's it's a wild ride.
Yeah. I typically like I try to start a song, and sometimes I will, But I typically just feel like when I start a song, it's so basic, or sometimes it's not like the chords are not as cool. I just wanted a cool melody. And what's cool about with Eric is that he would start off those different kind of ideas, and then it's like, oh yeah, I can force this weird melodic thing that I had into this. And like I know that he doesn't listen to this music by himself, so he'll never know that I like was inspired by this. He'll just think it's something new and exciting. But yeah, I mean, it's funny, the difference on us is that I'm total lead singer and total drummer. He has a bunch of posters behind him that is all these cool things that he went to go see, and like every poster and everything behind here is all the cool shit that I've done with the guys. Like, it's literally just a hall of fame of Ryan Argast in front, like back there. It's my vein room for sure. But to be honest, like I put a lot of this stuff up during the height of quarantine, and I was really sad. I was like, dude, am I ever gonna do music again? Like, what does that even look like? And like, are we ever gonna play again? Is this like? And so I just found all these things, I dusted all these things up off, and I just started putting them up and reminded myself, like, dude, you've done cool stuff. Like, stop acting like you didn't accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. Now, I've talked about this all the time in a billion different kind of podcasts, and it's always about, and Eric will be he's a big proponent on this too, is that talking about like how as a musician or just in life, you keep pushing your goalpost back farther and farther. It's like someone asked me in a recent interview, do you have everything you wanted? Have you completed all your goals in life? Someone asked in something like that recently. And I was like, if you asked me that question and I was 17 years old, then yeah, I accomplished everything that I wanted at 17 years old at this 29 years old. But at 29, no, I have not accomplished everything that I wanted. And hopefully when I'm 39, I will also say that no, I didn't accomplish everything when I in fact accomplished everything that I wanted at 29. So basically your goalpost keeps getting pushed back further and further. And I often forget that we do cool things. And this is a reminder of being like, hey man, like, look what you're doing. So even though it's in vain, it's a good reminder for myself.
Yeah, I love how both of it's like stems from inspiration. Like,
yep,
like
yep.
these are like, it's like all my heroes back here, and all the festivals that I want to play one day, and the bands I'd love to tour with one day. And then you're like, yeah, this is the stuff about me.
And I get it, man.
You can tell who's on the front of the stage and who's in the back.
Yeah, I know what I am, and so, but for real, it is nice to look at it and be like, okay, cool, we good, So it's a weird thing being a lead singer when half your brain is constantly narcissistic and the other half of your brain is constantly thinking you're not doing enough. It's just like,
man, that's what I always say. I always say that being an artist is a mixture of extreme narcissism and like crippling self-deprecation. You're just like, I'm never good enough, but also I'm amazing.
Yep. That's yeah.
Well, when you're in a band, everybody kind of has their own moment, right? Because sure, you're the lead singer, but think about the drum solo, think about the guitar. I mean, everybody has their moment. And I think especially when you're performing live, the crowd takes notice, right? Because everybody does have their moment to shine at the end when you're saying this is so-and-so on drums, so-and-so on keys. They recognize that.
Yeah. And I think it's there's something, I think especially just about being a drummer, it's one of those things that you have to sort of understand. It's like a sink or swim. And I feel like I'm a teacher as well, so I see my students go through it around the same age I did, around like 16 to 18, and they realize, wait, like I'm the most important person in the band in terms of like the foundation and like guiding the band through a song, but nobody pays attention to me. Like I'm not the most important person in terms of what people listen to and like what people watch live, generally speaking. Now, of course, it's not to say that, drummers in general don't get their moments. And like, for me personally, I love interacting with the audience, and I consider myself a very like, I'm I'm like a lead drummer. So it's I really like to participate with the audience and like exchange goofy faces, and I'll ham it up and do stick tricks and all that fun stuff. So I really liked the visual engaging aspect of playing drums. But yeah, I mean it's a totally different role, because we do have to kind of realize that at the end of the day, Ryan is the focal point, and what I do as a drummer is I'm an accompanying instrument. I'm here to accompany the people who are lead. So whether that's Toter in a guitar solo or that's Ryan and everything else, um, yeah, it's just it's a role mindset, and it's neither good nor bad. It just is.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is we were a much as far as members, a lot of people were in the band. We started as a 6-piece, and now, and as a 6-piece, it felt like we can hide behind each other a little bit more, like maybe mistakes a little bit more, or maybe just like different things. And now with the less members in the band, it feels like, well, he kind of said lead drummer, but like, but there's lead guitar and there's only that stuff, right? If you screw up, everyone's looking at it kind of a little bit more. And I think, you know what I mean? But like, they don't
True.
realize how good a drummer is sometimes. Maybe the general public doesn't realize how good a drummer is, but they'll definitely know how bad a drummer is, because it's like, what is happening? I can't do this. I can't dance. I can't move.
Incredibly true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I do a lot of session stuff, and I always tell like students that your goal when you're playing with, especially with someone new, that you want them to not look back at you. Like they should be comfortable enough to do their job and do it really well, and like that's when I have done a good job, is when Ryan or Toter or anybody else I'm playing with doesn't have to worry about me, and they
And
can
and
focus
first of all,
on
I play with some other drummers in
playing the
different
best shows
projects
that
and different
they
stuff
can
like
do,
that, and that
right?
is
If they're
100% true,
constantly like,
because there'd be times
what
where
is
I'm
this
like,
drummer
dude, what are you
doing?
doing? Because if
Then
I, the
everything's
singer,
out of sync.
have to get you back on, we're having a really, really rough time. Because first of all, I 100% have singer rhythm, and so like it's bad. Like I'm just like, I'm doing my tempo. So if I have to bring back the drummer, that's bad. And that's never really happened with Eric. And anytime I look back at Eric, it's because maybe he did the one hit, like the one hit he always does was different, and I'm like, whoa, I can't believe you didn't hit that hit, or whatever the case is. But I remember when he first auditioned for my solo project, again, many moons ago, we showed him this song, and we thought, okay, we're going to really find out how good of a drummer he is. We're going to play this song real quick. I'll sing it, and then we're going to play the drums right out of the gates. We're going to play it a second time, and you have to play with us. And we showed him the song, and for those who are fans of Marina City, you'll know it's called Goodbye Eileen. We showed him Goodbye Eileen, and we're like, so you think you can play that? Now follow us. Ready? A 1, a 2, a 3. And then we started playing it, and then he played it like flawlessly. And I remember looking at the other members in the band. I was like, did you guys send him this song? Like, how the fuck did he just know how to play this song one time through listening to it? That's not real. And then that's when we knew he had to be in the band.
I know you touched on the numbers sort of shrinking a little bit. What is it like going from, okay, I'm talking to this person, this person, to, okay, I really know what this person's going to say, as opposed to I've got so many more minds to think about?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's pros and cons for sure on having a large group and a smaller group. I mean, I will say for me, like, I always dreamed of having a large family when I was growing up, and like seeing like the McAllisters and Home Alone and being like, wow, how fun would that be? Just all of us just hanging out all the time. And then then you watch it as you grow up and you go, this sucks. Like nobody noticed that the one kid was missing 2 times in in 2 movies. You know what I mean? I will say that like as a 6-piece, when we were a 6-piece, it was really nice to have that huge group. Always, we were like a gang walking in. It was always filling up the room in that sense. But as you get older, and not really by our fault, not like we wanted them to leave, you start getting more confident in your abilities, and you want to shine a little bit more, and you want to have a little bit more say, and maybe you couldn't do that because there were so many people, so many cooks in the kitchen or whatever. And I think the big thing, honestly, it's not how many people are really in the room. It's about how well you know the people. And I'm just lucky enough that everyone in Marina City, we've been playing together for a really long time, and we know each other for a really long time. That it's just that we know what the other person is almost thinking or where they're going to go with it, and I think that goes really well. I mean, I play in a wedding band on the side and do these other nightclub things on the side, and like the first few times I was playing with them, it was like I was uncomfortable in my own skin. And sometimes there's songs that I've played for a long period of time, or I've rehearsed, but I'm playing with this other band, and I don't know where they're going. I don't know what they're trying to do. I don't know how we're going to stretch out the song. With Marina City, it's like we just give looks. It's not even like we just know where this is going to go. So I would say that's more important than the number of people that are in the band.
Yeah, I would say that the only thing that really changed was, I would just say that the songwriting maybe got slightly more focused as the numbers dwindled. But in terms of like personality, like all the past members of Marina City are all super close friends of ours. Like we're a tight group, and it's never been like, as it got smaller, we got like tighter and closer as friends or anything like that. Like even with 6 of us, they're all my brothers, it's a very tight
I was
knit
just talking
family.
to one of them literally as we were waiting in the waiting room for the Zoom. So like, we're just it's really nice. And to be honest with you, I've been in bands since I was like in 5th grade. I was starting bands, and every single time a member left in any of those bands, they become a stranger. I never talked to them again. I'm lucky enough that anytime that someone's left here, I think it's just that we've been to hell and back, and nobody understands exactly what we've gone through unless you were in the project. So it's kind of like hard to be like, it's just things that you can talk about with us that you just a wife or a brother or someone else just wouldn't understand because they never experienced it like we did together.
Yeah. And I should also mention that we're lucky in the fact that no one has left in like bad blood. No one, we haven't like butted heads with anyone and kicked anybody out. It's really just been like,
actually,
look,
that's not
my
true.
life is
yeah,
okay.
There was that one time.
there was one person we may have kicked out.
It's funny. The only reason why he says that is because like there are people in this band that I often forget were even in the band. And so when we talk about the 6, there's a certain group that we talk about, and then the other ones were like, oh yeah, I guess there's 2 guys that we ended up kicking out at some point, but they're so small in the story. And that sounds bad if they listen to this. I'm sure they'll never listen to this. They're so small in the history of Marina City that it's hard to even think that. Yeah, I mean,
it was very early on for those other people. But yeah, I mean, for everybody else, it was very like, my life is changing. I want to go in a different direction, and you can't help but understand and appreciate that. So yeah, we've been lucky to not have like heads clashing, at least in the past 8 years this band. So
I'm curious about your individual roads to Marina City and like just pre-meeting each other, what you guys were doing. I mean, Ryan, you mentioned being in bands since 5th grade, and Eric, for you, I know you talk about teaching music, but even just as kids and starting out in music. And Ryan, we talked on the Idle Nerd podcast about how you fell into it, but I'm kind of interested for both of you to talk about everything leading up to being in the band and meeting each other, how you got to that point, what you were doing.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I mean, Ryan and I have obviously talked about this a little bit. We grew up not too far from each other. Our neighborhoods are probably half an hour apart, but we certainly weren't in the same like high school system. But it's interesting to me like how we grew up relatively close to each other in relatively similar times, but our local music scene and the way that we came up was totally different. Like for me, it was mostly like I was playing in like really crappy garage bands, and we would play house shows in people's basements, and nobody had merch. There were no venue shows. There's no like dream of tour. It was very like underground and super punk. And it's not even that we were playing punk music, but it was just like that vibe where everything was just really gritty and just like like everything was a house party, house show. And that's kind of what I sort of kept doing all the way through college is stuff like that. There are a couple bands that I played in where we would play like real venues. College was mostly focusing more on the classical side of things because I was trying to flex those muscles a little bit. And then yeah, once I graduated, it was just trying to find something that was a little bit more established and realizing what that was. And playing with Ryan and with what eventually became Marina City was like genuinely my first time actually playing proper venues in like, real established shows and in front of, and like promoting and trying to bring people out and selling tickets and like doing the actual quote unquote proper band thing rather than the super DIY basement show vibe.
And I was the exact opposite. Like from day one, I was trying to get people to come to the shows. I was like, I mean, I did do like garage gigs, and I would try to like sell tickets to my garage so that you can go see us. I was standing in line trying to give out CDs of my band while you were going to see some other band play at a local venue. Um, it's one of those things where it's like I always say that I've been dancing and singing as long as I can walk and talk. And I've been promoting the band and doing a bunch of stuff with that ever since I could understand what that meant. Like it's just like there's always some piece of me that feels that I just needed to get the art out there and take it really seriously. There's never been a time that I never took it seriously. And sometimes I take myself too seriously with that, and that, it hurts, whatever. But I think that's one thing, like not getting way off this conversation, but kind of what you were talking about with the new member or the loss of members is realizing how much I am a musician myself. Like this is it for me. I'm going to do music forever, whether or not this guy's in the band or this guy's not in the band, or I get married or I buy a house or I get another job that is a salary job. No matter any of those things happen, this is what's in my blood. This is what I do. So like, I remember someone at work hit me up and said, why? They literally said this. They said, why do you work so hard? Like, when do you take off? And I said that when I'm actually at work, that's when I'm working like on job stuff. But everything out of it, when I'm playing the weddings, when I'm doing with the band, when I'm promoting the show, when I'm doing this podcast, when I'm booking shows, whatever that is, making videos, those things, that's not even work to me. That's like my air to breathe. That's like it's like my superpower, where I feel like that makes me a little bit more, makes my life less dull, right? Like it makes my life special. I found like my wife and I are together because of music. My best friends and I are together because of music. That's just that air I breathe kind of thing. So to get back to your question about how I got here, it's like I was doing the same stuff I'm doing now when I was 12 years old, and just in a different level. And just keep doing that up.
It is your life, but it's also that escape because you've
Mhm.
made music your life, but when you play, when you write, when you record, when you do every little thing to promote what you're doing,
Right,
it's almost like you're getting away from the war outside of your bedroom window, if you will.
right, right, right. This is the way that I can express myself. This is the way that I'm able to connect with people. It's the way that I find friends. Everything is that.
It's interesting that Ryan and I came from two like very radically different backgrounds, but our drive has always been very similar. Like for me, for Ryan, he was like going out and promoting shows and like really working hard. Uh, and then for me, it was like I'm spending 6 hours a day practicing drums by myself in the basement. It's like it's the same vibe and that same dedication, but just in like two completely different lenses. And somehow we ended up in the same room together. Um, yeah, it's such a weird thing to go into this by choice, and I think about that all the time, and how people are like, oh, like, are you ever gonna have like a real job? And it's like, no, this is it for me. Like, aside from the fact that I'm screwed and I can't do anything else, but but I don't want to do anything else anyways. Like this has always been what we've wanted to do, and we couldn't picture our lives without it. Like I'm in the same situation. I know my wife because of a Marina City show, and it's wild how much music has influenced our lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me how you guys got the name Marina City.
So there's two honeycomb towers in the heart of the city of Chicago, right in downtown, and they're called Marina City. It's a apartment complex with restaurants and grocery stores and bars. And the idea is that a guy wanted to create a city within a city. Politicians, press, all those people laughed. They said there's no way that would be able to happen. Not only has it become a historical landmark, but it also has its own zip code. That's how big it is and how important it is. It has its own zip code. And so we figured that if the Chicago man was able to create something so wild and so insane as creating a city within the second biggest or the third biggest city in the world, or in the country, sorry, why can't we make it as musicians? And so Marina City was born that way.
That's awesome. One person's idea, collective sort of thing, or
Well, we had we had a billion band names all over the place, but I specifically remember how I brought the name to the table was because I went to, I think it was at the time called Sears Tower, but now it's the Willis Tower.
It's the Sears
Yeah,
Tower.
if you're in Chicago, you call it the Sears Tower. And we were peeking over, and you got to see super, super high, and they were telling all these buildings, and there was a little blurb about Marina City right there, and I had thought, out, no joke, out of the corner of my eye, the reason why that I was like, ooh, that sounds cool, was because I loved Mayday Parade, I loved Mariana's Trench, I loved Medina Lake, and I was kind of looking for some kind of band name like that, and then I saw that, and I was like, whoa, what is this? And Chicago Roots, and they tell them this whole story, not as inspiring as I just said it, but they basically said that, and I was like, guys, what about this? And I think other names were was it Second City was something too? Was it Second City Kids or something? And
I should also say that coming up with a band name is the worst part about being in a band.
That's the reason why we broken up and started something new.
We don't want to think of a new band name. It is the worst part. And I remember when we were bouncing around ideas and we just kept coming back to Marina City, and we asked her, the old manager of Ryan Allen.
Yeah.
And one of the big reasons why we stuck with Marina City is because we said Marina City, and he's like, it sounds like something that you've already heard of. So you could if you're talking to the hipster kids and you're like, oh, you know that band Marina City? And they go, yeah, I think I heard of them. Even it's a totally new band.
Yeah.
So that's literally a huge factor why.
He was in the basement and he said that to us, and he was like, I don't even think I gave him a second name. I think it was the name. It was like, okay, so we're going on a few names. Marina City. Yeah, that's the name right there. It sounds like, we're oh, wow. And then we don't even work with the guy anymore. So for 12, 15 years.
Yeah.
I think it's really important for people who have not heard your music before, your style, your sound, how you guys identify yourselves as an artist, the band Marina City. I know it's kind of a loaded question, but who is Marina City?
Yeah, it is a huge loaded question because it's still something that you figure out every single day, and it's one of the big.
We still fight about it. No.
13 years later, right?
Yeah. We're literally talking right now about what the next record is going to sound like, and we're trying to send out different playlists and stuff like that, and we're all like, no, not that, maybe this, because we're still. I think I don't know. One thing that Eric said earlier, he was like, people have left the band because they were like, I want to do something new, I want to try something new. And the irony of that is that almost every record, every project that we do is something new. You haven't heard the same Marina City record twice. And you haven't heard the same Marina City song twice. I think there's elements of Marina City that are pretty prominent through every song. And there's things that we're like, we got to make sure we have in there. But I think what's cool about it is that it just ebbs and flows on what we're really into at that moment because it's our project. Now, that has caused issues in the past with different labels or different producers that we want to work with. But I think it's also the longevity of the band is that we're able to grow musically as we're growing as adults. When we first started this band, I was 19 years old, 18 years old. And now I'm going to be turning 30 on February 2nd. And it's like what I listened to at 18, 19 is vastly different. It's not only what I listen to, but what I'm influenced by, what I'm into. And so to too long didn't read situation right here. I think Marina City is the growth of us growing up. It's what we're into now and what we were into at that moment, and maybe not into it later, but we're able to just change and morph. It's just us unapologetically. It's just, I mean, yeah, it's us. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of have talked a lot about writing selfishly and creating the music that we want to hear rather than the music that we think people will like. But I mean, I will say there are some pretty common threads. Like, I think there's a certain level of accessibility that we strive for with Marina City, where you kind of like, we'll be weird, but it's never gonna be out there to where someone's like, I don't understand, or it's not catchy. You know, like there's a certain level of danceability that we always strive for, and there's a certain level of like catchiness that we strive for, and certainly like groove and funkiness is like a huge aspect. But yeah, we're definitely not afraid to headbang a little bit. We're not afraid to do some popping and locking. Well, I am, but uh musically we're not. Yeah, it's definitely a wide range, but like Ryan said, it's really like what we enjoy doing in that moment
Yeah.
is what happens
We're
on
not
the record.
we're really not writing for anyone else. I mean, like, we'll talk about, like, okay, maybe we'll talk about what do the fans like, what do we really like, what do we see does well. Okay, let's use as influence. But at the end of the day, at the last project is just gonna end up being what we like, and we're like, hey, you guys, are you into this? And sometimes, man, it's tough. Like, you're like, oh, okay, well, we didn't get those fans to like this one, and but we got them
Yeah.
to like this. But I just think that, some of my favorite artists or like Fall Out Boy and the 1975, and just those two out of the gates. You listen to their entire discography, it's so different and immersive, and it's weird, and it's poppy, and all those things, and like, that's just what we want to do.
Yeah. I guess if we really had to put a label on it though,
Pop
like
rock,
yeah, I always say like pop alternative. If
pop
someone is
alternative.
like really insistent on like what you got to label it, like pop rock, pop alternative,
Yeah, it's right there.
where it's yeah.
I'm not an artist, so I don't know what kind of game I have in saying this, but from an outsider's perspective, it seems like it has never been a more exciting time to be a musician. And I say that because I think it matters less than it ever did before if you're trying to write that song that's a hit, if you're trying to write that song that fits into a box, because you're making music for yourself, just like you said, Ryan. I think, after such a long period where it was these producers saying this is what a hit sounds like, or it was these writers that you needed to work with if you wanted to get played on the radio, we are seeing the playlists on Spotify. First of all, radio play has so much less relevance now in what the fans actually like, what's going to turn into, who's coming to see the shows, who's actually invested in the artist. You know, you write what you want to write. That's what's going to pay off, because people can sniff the bullshit, or they can tell when something's authentic. If you're authentic, they like it or they don't like it. It's cool if they do. If they don't, cool. But I'm just noticing that not everything is so streamlined. Where it's like, okay, well, the things that work are the things that are following this formula, and that seems pretty exciting. I got to imagine for guys like you who don't really need to do the same thing. You talk about change, you talk about always evolving. We see that with all the artists that are successful today. It's like they don't need to necessarily do the same thing anymore.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I definitely think, again, there's pros and cons to everything. There's a lot of freedom in what a musician can do today, opposed to maybe what it was back then, and like, just 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Uh, but the other thing about being an artist, and like, not to be a downer too, it's like there are so many things that matter more to the music industry than the music and the art now, which is really difficult. Um, a label, an A&R at a label will say, I will sign this person who maybe never had any music before, never really song wrote, never did any of that stuff, but it has a really strong social media following, over the person that is absolutely killing it in music, is absolutely incredibly talented, connects with everyone, but their social media is not really big. Because if they do sign that big social media influencer and it flops, how was he supposed to know that it flops? I mean, look at all this huge following that they have here. It's really, I mean, I got to take that chance right there. And they're in the labels like, you know what, you're right. That was a good move. I'm trying to do that, and it just didn't work out. No worries, you got your job. But then if I go sign this artist, who's like really, really talented, but flops. Then the label goes to the A&R and goes, dude, what the hell were you looking at? Why did you think that this small act was going to work out? You're fired. And no one wants to get fired, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, and then on top of that, everything that we consume is an algorithm. And because of that, sometimes they're like, oh, you're promoting something, you're showing off your show, you're showing off that you're really talented. No. You got to give me the boobs, TikTok says. Instagram says you got to give me the stupid shit that you fell off a building and almost killed yourself. I need to see that stuff.
We need memes.
I need memes for algorithm here. So it makes you go, you have this false, like what a musician actually is, like this false perspective. Because all of a sudden, it's like the musicians, all they're focusing now are just making the craziest meme stuff and not writing. They're focused on making, how can I make the goofiest shit that goes viral before I get like an actual song? And so maybe music kind of deludes a little bit in that, right? But not to sound like an old man, get off my lawn kind of thing here and yelling at the clouds, because that's kind of how I sound like right now. But I just want to talk about being real. The flip side of that is realizing that maybe a musician and success as a musician isn't necessarily always playing the Super Bowl, having the number one song on the radio, and all those things. Maybe that world that we are so accustomed to is not necessarily what success is as a musician anymore. Maybe success as a musician is having a niche that your fans and there's people that actually connect to it and actually listen to it and actually buy it and actually show their friends of it. And even though you're not the biggest person in the world and you didn't go viral, you have this corner of the world that loves what you do and is important to them. Your art is important to them. And if you can get past that, you can break that wall, which is not easy. And I'm not saying that we break it through it all the time, because sometimes I'm on the high highs, the low lows, like we talked about earlier in this thing. But if you can get to that, then you realize like, oh, all right, I don't have to go do that meme thing so I can get on the radio, because nobody, like you just said, nobody gives a shit about the radio. I just care about what these people who always backed me care about, and that's success right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you're totally like saying two separate things, but you're both right. You know, like I 100% agree that it is a super exciting time to be a musician. Like there's no reason that Kendrick Lamar should be as successful as he is. That guy does not write formulaic hits, but his music is incredible. It's adventurous, it's daring, and it's wild, and it's really honest, and it's really shocking. And there's nothing that's like that's the least radio friendly. Like all of those things are the most radio unfriendly things you can do. Yet he's still one of the biggest artists in the world, and very deservedly so. You know, the same thing happens with Childish Gambino, 1975. Like people are really adventurous and out there. You know, Charlie XCX puts out a crazy hyper pop album and then writes it's like a regular pop record. Like it's very exciting artistically. But yeah, Ryan's right. There's still a game to be played, where now it's maybe not who can write the nicest formula for an easy 2.5 minute pop song. Now it's, you know, who can frame their music in the most memeable way to get the most TikTok followers. And you know, I think there's always probably going to be a game to be played in the long run. There's always a slight catch to being a musician in general. But I do think I'm a little bit optimistic in the fact that I do think that people recognize artistry and are excited about people who are genuine and really pushing themselves and trying to push the envelope and have something really genuinely interesting to say. I do think that stuff will always break the mold and always rise to the top.
Yeah, I will just say that like all the artists that you also announced still don't have the number one record on the radio, or are not playing. Well, I guess maybe Kendrick played the Super Bowl, right? But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that there's just a whole nother level of success, and they're all successful. I remember actually seeing someone go like, look at rock music. The biggest rock artist is 1975, and they can't sell out some venue that they did. This was a few years ago now, even though they just sold out the Madison Square Garden. But it's like it doesn't even matter. There's just 25,000 people there, and in this day and age, you can get 25,000 people to go to a show. I mean, it's even crazier. So So, but yeah, I think there's just a different level of success and the ability of things that you can do now. So in that sense, is exciting. But I will say I do miss the days where you just had to be a road dog and go out on the road and do those things and people come to shows. Nowadays, it's like we just got to make sure we have the best TikTok content.
Ryan, I do love what you said though. How, like, why does it matter if you're, if you really find that base that you connect with, even if it's not the Super Bowl? Because people complain about, like, they complain about how many artists there are and, like, the fact that so many songs are releasing every week, every day. Why is that a bad thing? That just means more opportunities for people to hear good music. It's more of a chance for artists to get out there, and it's more of a chance for fans to hear it. And you never know what's going to connect with people. You never know what artist is going to resonate with said listener in said town, no matter what venue, big or small. And I feel like, there should never be a limit to how many artists are out there that are successful. And as you just said, what does successful mean? It's not the size of the venue. It's not where the music is being played and how many people can hear it at the same time. If you can connect with one person and make a difference to them and entertain them or inspire them or make them feel something, you've done your job as a musician.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I 100% agree with everything you just said.
Yeah, I will say the strange thing that I think we're struggling with a lot, personally, is just the fact that because things are so digital now. Like when we first started this band, it was very much about going out and touring and being face to face with people, and that's how you grew your audience. And literally, since this band has started till now, that whole landscape has totally changed. I
It's
mean,
wiped out.
COVID really accelerated this process, but I think it was going to get here eventually. But like all of our exchanges now are digital. They're through a computer screen, and I think it's in a lot of ways it's amazing because it really broadens your reach, and there's the potential for how big your band can get is exponentially larger than it was 10 years ago. However, the downside is now it's like looking at numbers on a screen, and there's a detachment to it.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to Ryan looking at the posters he has in his room and reminding himself of all the cool stuff that we've done in the past. Sometimes I have to go, I have to take a step back and be like, yeah, there's 40,000 people who listen to us every month on
Yeah.
Spotify. Like that's like a non-comprehensible thing to me, that there are 40,000 people, and a lot of people would be like, that's not very many. And and there's some people who would like literally cut off their pinky to have that many listeners on Spotify. And it's like, just again, it's this weird detachment of like I don't know what that number means.
Yeah.
I'm appreciative to the ends of the earth, but I don't know what that number means.
What does that compute to? Yeah, I mean, the fact that we have to say, oh, Spotify numbers are great. Like everyone cares about the Spotify numbers and TikTok. And I was just telling the guys, like one of our big plans for this year is trying to build that up as much as possible. And it's a weird thing because we've always focused so much on our live show and our music and the way that we connect with people, that those things that apparently everyone cares about, we've always kind of faltered with. So if we can get that up a little bit, and then you realize all the other stuff that we do, and it's like, oh wow, we're ahead of the curve. That'd be great. I mean, to be honest with you, like when I was on American Idol, how many people had never performed in front of people? How many of those contestants had never been on stage before? And that's like, it's mind-boggling to me. And sometimes they faltered and didn't get to the next round because that was something that they weren't comfortable with. They're like, yo, you can put up a iPhone up to my a camera phone up to me real quick, and for 30 seconds I can sing. But me performing and getting a crowd engaged, it's a whole nother level. And luckily, again, I sound like an old man here, but that's how we had to start. And now we have to do the opposite, trying to get them back. That's how we built a career, is from that.
I just have to mention really quickly, that's actually something really fascinating that I noticed when I did a lot of the Idol unaired interviews. Many of them after yours, Ryan, a lot of contestants, I don't know if you met any of them, had somewhere close to 1 million, 2 million followers and were scouted because of their presence on TikTok, on social media, and didn't get sent through past the auditions because it wasn't about performing in front of the screen. Not a put down, just an interesting fact that performing on stage
Sure.
is totally different.
I did appreciate that about American Idol. For all whatever heat you can give them about just different things about being artificial on certain things, they definitely were like, I literally don't care what your social media says. Like, I just liked that you got scouted for it, um, and I appreciate that a lot. That they were like that. There were definitely people when I was in my audition where they were showing off their social media. Where I was like, well, if I was the producers, I would totally let them go through because they would have all their followers following my show, and I want that. But then at the end of the day, they're just like, I mean, sure, but we're American Idol. We don't need,
Right.
So, you know, I did appreciate that.
So you start talking about upping the social media presence and things going virtual with COVID. Any segue from that to the simulation and all the stuff that you've been working on with that? Because I feel like we can definitely get into that if you'd like.
Oh yeah, no, that was 100% the inspiration behind the simulation. Which the record's called the simulation because we, for 2 years, we found ourselves essentially interacting in a simulated world, and it was just all about like having these genuine connections, but they're also not real, so it like the whole record is just about sort of exploring that idea of like what's real, what's not, what's a simulation of something real, but what's actually real, and then digital. It was just a confusing time, and we drew a lot of inspiration from that whole record was written with us over Zoom in our home studios here. Like we were only in the room recording for Runaways. That was the only song that we were actually in the room together recording for. Everything else was recorded at home.
I mentioned this before. Nina Simone says that an artist's responsibility is to write music that reflects the society or climate that they're currently living in. And I think that the simulation, we went out to do that. We wanted to make like almost like a time capsule of what is happening at that moment. Now, it took a couple of years to write this record because of all the delays and trying to figure out how we're actually going to record because we never did that before. So there are times where, I mean, it went through two different presidencies in this record. It's two different kind of styles that are happening. So I think in the end of the day, we wouldn't have written the simulation if 2020 and everything that happened because of that didn't exist. And I would like to think that hopefully 5 years from now, we'll look back at the record and laugh at like, oh wow, it was kind of crazy back then, but look at how great it is now. I don't have to sing that. But unfortunately, we'll see where that kind of goes. Either way, though, the simulation is what life is today.
Well, it's interesting because we're going to actually take a little listen to Runaways. And then at the end of the conversation, we're going to play the whole song. So I'm wondering, before we take a little listen, about a minute long, are you getting any flashbacks being on a Zoom call? If that's the one song that you recorded over Zoom and we're talking over Zoom, are you getting any flashbacks to what it was like to be on that call trying to write over Zoom?
So it wasn't even Zoom. Sometimes we weren't even Zoom. We would just do like emails back and forth.
Oh, wow.
Do like, hey, let me track something and send it
Oh,
over.
okay.
And then we would just be like in a group message, like, hey, what do you guys think? Blah blah. And then because at the time, I learned now I can record vocals and be on Zoom at the same time. You can hear what I was doing, but I didn't know. So and I had an old computer that I was doing it all with. So I'm like trying to figure out how I can record and then send it to you guys. Is it good? No, it's not good. Damn. Okay, let me do it again. You know. So I would say flashback wise, we did a lot of podcasts together and a lot of band rehearsals like this. So yes, but I'm hoping that in 2023, less of this and more of together.
The silver lining of all that was it forced us to do things that we'd never done before and have probably been on our to-do list of things we need to learn how to do. Like I didn't have half this microphone set up that I have for my drums that I do now. Like the camera that I'm using for this Zoom call, I didn't have this microphone I'm speaking. Like it forced us to totally dive into this area of technology that totally improved our craft. Even though it was a hellscape around us at the time.
Do you want to briefly mention the podcast you guys were doing at the time? I know it was a little while ago, but
Yeah, so it was called the Crush podcast, and we call the Crush like based off our fan base. I will say that I am releasing a solo podcast very soon. It's going to be,
wow.
I'll just name drop it right here. It's called The Confessions of a DIY Lead Singer. And I'm going to be talking about different stories about my time on American Idol, a little bit more candid, and also behind the scenes stuff about when we were on Warped Tour, when we recorded with John Feldman and met Travis Barker, and just all the different things of like maybe tips and tricks of how to try to be successful as a DIY artist yourself. They're going to be like bite-sized little podcast episodes I'm going to be releasing soon, and I'm really excited to see how that kind of reacts. But I'm hoping that the members of Marina City will be able to get together and do some more podcasts a little bit more too, because that was a lot of fun to be able to talk in the inside. Maybe I'll just have you guys guest on my show.
Maybe. You're always trying to go solo, and then I'm always there anyway. So I'll be your first guest. You know,
and a drummer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'll step back and give you guys the rehearsal space. You guys can practice doing the
Perfect.
the first episode. while I play Runaways, you guys can no. But hey, you know what? But before I play that track, anything that you want to quickly just tell us? I mean, we can dive in afterwards, but just any little tidbits about kind of what this song is about, or what you want people to know before they hear about 1 minute of this song, Runaways.
My mom once said to me, she was like, it's so funny that you listen to songs right now and it's like they sound happy and like upbeat, but they're like really sad. Like, what is going on with people? I'm like, Ma, that's literally Marina City music. That's like all Marina City stuff. She was like, what are you talking about? I was like, Runaways is not a happy song. It's actually a really, to be honest with you, man, it's literally a suicide love pact that these two characters have in this song. The song is the climax of the simulation where you're breaking out of it. You're running away from everything from that moment. But just because you run away from your problems doesn't mean that your problems don't come with you. Sometimes the thing is like, they're like, oh, I don't understand. An NFL player, he has $1 billion now. Why would he go still rob this? Or why would he have a gun in his apartment? Or why would he have these people that he's hanging out with? It's like, dude, like he grew up with those things. Like, this is like, you can't just take him out of it and then all of a sudden he sees life as a rich person, like, or whatever. And that's the same thing with just anyone's trauma, right? So Runaways.
Like Kendrick Lamar's records.
Kendrick Lamar's records. This is, you can run away from the trauma, but the trauma doesn't just leave you. So that's what that's what Runaways is about. And it's a dark love story with that two characters.
Well, I've listened to it twice today. It's a bop. Let's take a listen.
If you really love me, then you just gotta trust me, 'cause we won't stop and running to places that we can't see. Not running without you, not leaving without you, not living without you. If you really love me, then you just gotta trust me, 'cause we won't stop and running to places that we can't see. Not running without you, not leaving without you, not living without you. Love that never leaves him, vibe that never sees him, and he wonders if he can be a man. He's a shadow of his brother, each nail's a different color. If this is living, he don't want it. He says, light yourself all of the fun, internet's a loaded gun. All my friends don't know my name, every feeling feels the same. If you really love me, then you just gotta trust me, 'cause we won't stop and running to places that we can't see. Not running without you, not leaving without you, not living without you. If you really love me, then you just gotta trust me, 'cause we won't stop and running to places that we can't see. Not running without you, not leaving without you, not living without you. Jumping balconies, hanging off ceilings. You can't ever leave. I'm not living without you. Jumping balconies, hanging off ceilings. You can't ever leave. I'm not living without you. If you really love me, then you just gotta trust me, 'cause we won't stop and running to places that we can't see. Not running without you, not leaving without you, not living without you. Not living.
Man, to hear a song, to hear the meaning behind the song, to feel the beat of the song, and then like hearing you talk about it, it's such an interesting experience. Because after you explained it, listening back was like a difference, listening the first two times, then hearing you talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, this is a boy and a girl. They come from two different kind of broken families, two different kind of broken families. One the first character that we meet, her dad's always cheating, mom's always drugged up, brother's doing drugs, the whole family's doing drugs, she's doing drugs, and she's really outgoing and stuff like that, but she's also experimenting with things that are not super great. And then you got the other one where the kid is a guy, and the mom's helicopter mom, dad doesn't give a shit about him, loves the brother more than him, and it's constantly always living in the brother's shadows and realizing that he's kind of feels like a nobody. And so now they meet up together, and their traumas come as one.
Mm. It's risky, but where do you come up with this?
He'll never tell.
I think the simulation is putting a mirror up into society and showing what the consequences of things that we're doing right now.
Mm.
And I think that both of those stories and those characters are all too common. And I think that just shows that this is what can happen.
Yeah, I think frankly we all know these two people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we've gone to school with them, we've seen them at work. Like these are very real everyday characters, quote unquote, that I think everyone runs into.
Yeah.
Well, Eric, I mean, what's your perspective? Because Ryan coming up with the story, and I assume he takes care of the melody and the lyrics. So is your involvement at all with the story, or are you more just focused on putting the track together?
I mean, to be honest, in the writing process, I am pretty hands off lyrically. Yet somehow Ryan always manages to write something that's relatable, and I'm like, man, I get that.
Yeah.
I mean, he's definitely told me some things I shouldn't write.
Yeah.
He's like,
I guess, yeah. I'll pop in and be like, hey, man, you need to change that one. But generally speaking, yeah. I mean, in terms of like subject matter and stuff like that, it's not something that I try to be a yes man, I guess, in the process. And I think that's probably important in all aspects of songwriting.
Well, there's got to be so much trust involved in collaborating on a regular basis, because you know what you're good at, both individually and everybody in the band. Of course, there's always the opportunity, I'm sure, for, well, hey, maybe I would change this or I would change that. But at the same time, a lot of it, I imagine, is about leaving each other to kind of do what you know how to do, and then coming together and you do your thing, I do my thing, and we trust each other.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that has really happened as the band's gotten smaller, is we've really started to understand and adapt to our individual roles a little bit better. Like there's certainly a much clearer understanding of like what I do for Marina City and what Ryan does and what Toto does, and it's just like it's a lot more streamlined in that regard. But yeah, I mean the other flip side of that coin too is, frankly, we've been together for 13 years, this iteration of Marina City, the members have been together for 8-9 years. So it's like we have all pretty much the exact same shared experiences. We've been around each other so much that we've had all of the deep talks, and we've seen the craziest things and experienced the craziest things. So I think when Ryan comes back with lyrics, we're like, oh yeah, we understand that because I was there too. It becomes like about all of us in a way.
Brian, when you were explaining the story, I think what impressed me so much and what led me to say, where do you come up with this stuff, is I'm a screenwriter. So I develop TV shows, and it takes so long to write a 60-page pilot, right? And you're coming up with a world, and then you try to imagine what would be a season, what would be a series. And that can take a year or 2 years. So everything that you just described to me, I felt like that's a story that you could see playing out on a TV show over a few seasons. And you managed to fit it into a song, a bite-sized song, everything playing out. And so what blows my mind as a fan of music is a writer's ability to fit everything, which seems on paper like it would take so much longer to be laid out, into that smaller bite-sized thing that you consume in 3 minutes.
I really appreciate you saying that. I mean, that's obviously really high praise, and it's not easy. I'm not here to tell you that it's an easy thing. And then on top of that, you're not even talking about how I try to make each song have the same amount of syllables so that it's catchy. Make sure the melody's catchy between that stuff, and like, it's like all these other things that go into it that makes it even harder. Um, not it's not necessarily to pat myself on the back though, but sometimes I'm envy of the people who write these songs so quickly. Like, I've been working for another company called Songfinch, which I would write custom songs for people that would come, and maybe they want to do like an anniversary gift for their husband or wife or whatever the case is, and they'll give me some ideas of things that they want in their song, and then I'll start writing it. And I'm trying to get it down so that I can finish a whole song within like 4 hours, but like I haven't got there. And maybe it's because I care too much. They're like, that's just not good enough. I need to do that. And maybe other people, whatever. But for me, I need to say something. I need to feel like, oh, that's clever. And so it takes me a bit. And I guess I get comfort knowing that like Smells Like Teen Spirit took Kurt Cobain like 5 years to write just that riff the correct way. And that's the simplest riff in the world. That's something that like literally School of Rock kids learn on their first day of lessons, but sometimes writing simple is harder than other stuff. We had a manager. He played in a really, really prominent metal band, and he would always talk about how pop music would be more difficult than metal music because metal music has no rules. You can just do whatever. And then pop music, there's all these different rules that you have to make sure that the whole world can not only think is clever and not cheesy, but can relate to, and then that's not a down on metal music. That's just what he said. And I think both music can be really difficult at times, but
Yeah, there's certainly a I talk about it with my students a lot. Is to me, I think the essence of creativity comes from limitation, right? Being able to limit yourself in literally what tools you have available to you, or maybe it's a time limit or a genre, because if you it's easy to get that sort of option paralysis of like, wow, I can do literally anything I want. There are no rules. Yeah.
Ryan, I know that you mentioned that it might take longer than we might think. Would you say that there's not really a formula as far as how long a typical song takes? Does it vary? Do you guys have a typical routine, or?
yeah, I mean, well, the way that we write so many bite-sized songs, like 30-second or like a minute song rather, and then it's just like a verse and a chorus, and then we just kind of shelve it forever until we need it, and we just keep writing. So like there may be a song that maybe we'll record this year and release it this year that we wrote half of it in 2017, and then it's like, oh, going back to it. And then also then you look at it and it's like, well, I don't really feel that way anymore, or I see that perspective a little bit differently. So then we change it. I mean, the simulation was kind of like that. There's a lot of songs that were actually old songs for us. And then Eric hits me up and was like, hey, what if like all these songs kind of connected a little bit? And I went back and like rewrote most of the stuff in there. Maybe kept some of the choruses and stuff like that. That kind of is the reason why we picked the song, but then just built out that verse a little bit more to make it connect. So I would say that typically there isn't an answer. And I won't even say like the fast song, sometimes the song that takes forever is the best song that we wrote. Sometimes the song that took 3 seconds to write was the best song we wrote, it can all vary.
Are you guys always in the studio together, or do you ever record stuff separately?
Well, we actually haven't been in the studio together since probably 2020, February 28, 2020. So everything we've been doing the last 3 years now has been separately. But that's definitely going to change. We're going back in the studio together as a full band at the end of February. So it'll be 3 years almost to the date last time we were in there that we'll be able to do that. And I'm hoping that we can do more of that in 2023 for sure.
Yeah, I think honestly, as part of that limitation breeds creativity thing, I think we sort of intentionally structured the simulation to be like, let's try and do this all on our own. And I think this time around it'll probably still start most of these ideas will probably start in our own spaces, but we're definitely very intent on being in the same room this time around. We miss that energy.
Yeah.
And our musk.
I just want to smell Eric as my.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Man, are there? I feel like this is. I don't know if this is like intrusive because you guys have your moments. Are there any rituals or any like warm ups or anything in particular that you would want to share as far as what happens when you guys get to the studio?
Studio wise, I'm not really too sure if there's like any ritual. I mean, I always warm up my voice. Like I warm it up almost every single day at this point now because I'm constantly using it. And I do a lot of weird stuff like that, different drinks that I'll drink, different like steaming, all that stuff to make sure my voice is all ready to go. I don't. You're looking at the two straight edge kids in the band, so neither of us really drink or drink at all. So we're constantly probably eating sweets instead. Um, but outside of that,
There's the goat sacrifice.
there's the goat sacrifice. I know we kind of skipped that over. That's not really too sexy. But before a show, what we always do is we always put our hands in together, and Eric usually says "clear eyes, full hearts," and then we all say "can't lose."
Oh, Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, you know it. Yeah.
Oh,
That's our ritual that we do before every show. Yeah,
Texas forever.
I'm literally. I just started streaming that. What am I? 15 years late. I just finished the first season.
I actually.
Oh,
never
it's so
seen
good.
it.
You're in for a great ride.
Dude, oh man. What do you guys use to record?
I'm on Ableton. Yeah.
You're in it right now. You're in my. I mean, I use Logic to record myself, but I'm using this mic, kind of Apollo Twin over here that helps do it all. I mean, all that record and my solo record, that's all recorded right here, in my home studio. I've been doing it myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just curious because some of our potential artist listeners, they might know different things about the DAW Digital Audio Workstation. For listeners who know not much about the recording software, I am curious for people that might want to know what your process is like when you open the software. I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about just kind of what you like about the stuff that you use? Because like I said, for anybody who is an artist who is techie in that way, who kind of knows like, oh, this is what I love or hate about Pro Tools, this is what I love or hate about Logic, what do you guys feel about the software that you guys use?
I love Ableton. The other guys think I'm an insane person, but but no, I think it's an incredible tool, especially for live. Like we use it to run our tracks, and it's amazing. It's sort of a sandbox where you can do essentially anything. Gets us back to our option paralysis thing though, where Ableton can be very overwhelming, and you can just easily be like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. But I will say it's a great tool, especially for building things out. So generally my process when I start a song is I have a template that I made that has like a piano sound. It has some synth basses that I usually gravitate towards too early, and it'll have like a pretty simple kick snare hat in there, and I'll kind of program that. It usually starts with just figuring out chords on the piano, and then once I have a structure that I like and a vibe that I like, then I'll start diving in and messing with sounds. One of our one of our best pieces of advice we got about songwriting was when we worked with John Feldman, and he was talking about how a good song can be played just on an acoustic guitar and singing. So I think starting with that super stripped back approach, and then building from there is what's really nice. I will say that the biggest drawback for Ableton though is it's a very clunky recording software. So I still record with it, but yeah, it's not as sleek as like a Logic or a Pro Tools.
Yeah, with me, I mean, I need everything simple. Like I'm just not. Just math and all that stuff is not really great with me, so I just need to be creative and get with it. So Logic, I'm able to just press record and do it, and then I kind of mess with it later. Same thing with I actually use Soundtrap, which is from Spotify. They have some simple stuff there that really helps things too. So if you're a beginner, or you're just like you're trying to do the simple stuff so that you can do well in your in your voice or in your playing, those always really help a lot.
Yeah, I would say like the less amount of barriers you have, the better. Like the thing that I hate about most in the songwriting process is scrolling through sounds,
Yeah.
being like, boom, 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 boom. Oh, what's the kick drum? Like, it's like, no, I just want to have some stuff that I know I can work with right away, and then do all that crap later. So my advice to anybody is streamline it so where you can jump in and just go and be unobstructed.
Absolutely.
So how does that work as a band? Or if, Ryan, are you recording vocals in Logic, and then Eric, you're doing drums in Ableton, and then putting that stuff together from different software into one song? How do you then put it all together in one software?
Well, we download all of the stems on everything, like in their WAV files, and then we send them over to maybe a producer or a mixing engineer or something like that, and then make it kind of all come together instead of us doing it. I mean, we've
Okay.
gotten better at it. Toter has actually gotten really good at mixing some stuff too, but that's just the usual way.
Mm-hmm. So I want to give you guys the chance to kind of really play in your own sandbox to talk about any other music that we haven't touched on, any other shows that we haven't touched on, anything Marina City or anything solo, whatever we haven't really discussed that you want to kind of promote or let people know about before we head out.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I feel like we touched a lot. This has been a really thorough interview, which I appreciate. Not usually people are just like, "What's your favorite color?" Do you like? Yeah, and we're just like, okay.
I'd like to know that, by the way, if you want to tell me. I've been wondering this whole time. We haven't talked about it.
And so no, I appreciate it. It's a good conversation. I just will say that, like, Marina City, it's not easy being a band for this long, and there's a lot of ups and downs that go with it. But I think what I've learned as a 19-year-old into becoming 29 to almost 30 in a couple weeks here is like just the journey of it all is what I appreciate the most. I don't remember much about the sold out shows or the those big accomplishments. I just remember loading there, what we got to eat, what we were doing backstage, those moments, hanging out and like getting to the songwriting that we got to it. And I just think that that's, as a musician, if you're listening to this, realize the reason why you're here is not because of all the little accolades or the awards or all that stuff. You're here because you wanted to connect with people. You wanted to do something fun and exciting. And you are. And you're so I really appreciate that with the band, and it works out that we all get along so well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. As Ryan said in the beginning of the podcast, it's being an artist of any kind, your goalposts are always moving. You're always striving for that next achievement, and you're never going to be satisfied. It's a blessing and a curse, but I think the blessing is exactly like Ryan said. It's enjoying the journey. It's stopping to smell the roses. It's, even in the worst times when you're on hour 8 of a van ride, it's still awesome. So yeah, it's all about enjoying the journey.
Yeah, I mean, with that, I think that so many people are going to want to come see you live. They're going to want to stay tuned for new music. I certainly want to come see you live. I know we talked, like I said, Ryan, time flies. I can't believe it was June 2022 that we talked last. We are going to link the interview that we did in the show notes in case people want to go back and listen to that. But since then, so much has happened. So what is coming up from Marina City? What is coming up for you, Ryan? What's coming up for you, Eric? 2023, bet it's going to be a big year. So let's hear about it.
I think right now we're really focused, since we released the simulation. We're going to be doing a lot more shows. I know that we're going to be touring in the summer, and then on top of that, we don't want to just stop at the simulation and wait and have our fans wait another 3 years for another record to come out. So I expect new music to come out right away as soon as possible. We're going back in the studio in February, and we'll hope to release that right away.
Yeah, less digital connections, more personal, face-to-face connections this year. So I hope that's what people can expect.
IRL, to use a digital term.
IRL, yes.
Yeah.
You know that thing that Instagram does? I see, to show my age, the notes thing that you can do now, and I didn't know that it was from AOL Messenger, where you go to Instagram DMs and the person's username where they can leave a little note under it. You know what I'm talking about?
You can do that with Instagram?
Wait, what? I didn't know you could do that.
So I mean, if
We're all behind.
well, no, a couple weeks ago, I go to my DMs and I see that everybody's name has a little like they've written these like almost it looks like an Instagram.
It's an
bio.
away message.
I don't know. Is that what that is? Because I'm like I'm
Like, is that? Yeah.
I don't know. I'm turning
That's what it
22
sounds
tomorrow,
like.
so I missed the whole AOL thing, and that's what I was like. My mom said that to me. She's like, "Yeah, that's what they did in AOL Messenger. Maybe it's that must be what it is, an away message." All the grown-ups are listening, like, "You're so little." You have like,
Yeah. Dude, all the Gen Zs are like, oh, this boomer band.
Jeez Louise, guys, making me feel old.
Yeah.
I know what TikTok is.
yeah.
We're on that.
Yeah,
Go,
we're on TikTok, so
go follow us. Anyone listening to this, go follow us at TikTok, Instagram. Those are the main ones that we're really focusing on, especially on Tickety Talks at Marina City Band. Right?
Cool,
Yeah.
cool. You guys want to plug any individual socials or any other things like a website or anything, merch?
I mean, I think it's our names, right? I mean, mine's at Ryan Argast, everything, and then yours is at Eric S. Urrea, right?
Eric S. Urrea. That's right.
Cool. And you can follow us on Instagram or TikTok at Artist Exchange Podcast, wherever you are listening. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe. Ryan, Eric, thank you guys very much for being a part of the Artist Exchange.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us.
Mama's always cooked and her dad is always broke, but he does his best with his eggs. The pills don't work no more, it's something to do on board, and she don't know where her shape fits in. She says, "Plans don't have all of the fun, freedom is a loaded gun. All my friends will go to hell, save yourself, don't need your help. Every